What happens when a wildlife expert and a beloved talk show host clash on live television in a way nobody saw coming? The cameras were rolling. The audience was laughing. And then everything changed in an instant that left everyone in the studio absolutely speechless. Before we get into what went down, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me if you think Robert crossed the line or if Kelly overreacted. Now, let's dive into this unbelievable exchange. The Kelly Clarkson Show was taping another episode, and Robert Irwin was the guest everyone was excited to see. He walked out with his usual charm, carrying a small container that presumably held some kind of creature, and the audience erupted in applause. Kelly greeted him with her signature warmth, hugging him as he took his seat on the couch. "Robert, it's so good to have you here," Kelly said, settling back into her chair. "I have to say, every time you come on the show, I'm both excited and terrified about what you're going to pull out of those boxes." Robert laughed, placing the container carefully on the table between them. "Well, Kelly, I promise this one is pretty harmless. In fact, I think you're really going to like her." "Oh no." "See, when you say things like that, it makes me nervous," Kelly replied, and the audience chuckled. "What do you have in there?" "This is a blue-tongued skink," Robert said, opening the container. "She's absolutely beautiful and completely docile. Blue-tongued skinks are native to Australia, and they're one of the most gentle reptiles you'll ever meet." He reached in and carefully lifted out the lizard, which was about a foot long with distinctive blue scales and that trademark blue tongue. Kelly leaned back slightly, her smile still present but clearly uncertain. "Okay, she's actually kind of cute," Kelly admitted. "But I'm going to be honest with you, Robert. I'm not a huge reptile person. I appreciate them from a distance." "I totally understand," Robert said, stroking the skink gently. "But, you know, Kelly, this fear that so many people have of reptiles, it's actually really damaging to conservation efforts. These animals are incredible, and they deserve our respect, not our fear." There was a slight shift in his tone, something that Kelly seemed to pick up on. Her smile tightened just a fraction. "Well, I think people can respect animals without necessarily wanting to hold them. Don't you think?" "Sure. But the problem is when people like you with massive platforms perpetuate this idea that reptiles are scary or gross," Robert said, his voice becoming more pointed. "You're essentially telling millions of viewers that it's okay to fear these creatures and that leads to them being killed, ignored in conservation efforts, or worse." The audience went quiet. Kelly blinked, clearly not expecting the conversation to take this turn. "I'm sorry people like me. Robert, I've never said reptiles are gross. I just said I'm not personally comfortable holding them. There's a difference." "Is there, though?" Robert countered, leaning forward slightly. "Because your body language right now, the way you leaned away when I brought her out, that sends a message. And when someone with your influence sends that message, it has consequences." Kelly's expression shifted from surprised to something harder. "Robert, I think you're reading way too much into a natural human reaction. I lean back when people bring out spiders too. That doesn't mean I'm campaigning against arachnids." "But you're normalizing the fear," Robert pressed. "My entire life has been dedicated to showing people that these animals aren't monsters. My father died doing this work, Kelly. And when I come on shows like yours, and I see hosts reacting with fear or disgust, then subtle reactions undermines everything we're trying to do." The studio had gone completely silent. Kelly set her cards down on the side table, her jaw tight. "First of all, Robert, I have nothing but respect for your father and the work your family does. But you don't get to come onto my show and lecture me about my natural reactions to animals. I've had you on multiple times. I've held snakes. I've had spiders on me. I've done all of it to support what you do. And I appreciate that," Robert said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "But appreciation isn't enough. We need people to actually change their perspectives, not just tolerate animals for a 5-minute segment. Kelly laughed, but it wasn't her usual warm laugh. It was sharp, disbelieving. Are you seriously sitting on my couch right now and telling me that I'm not doing enough for wildlife conservation? Robert, this is a daytime talk show. We're here to entertain people, to give them a break from their day. I'm not running a wildlife documentary series. Maybe that's the problem, Robert shot back. Maybe if shows like yours took conservation more seriously instead of treating animals like circus acts, we'd be in a better position as a planet. The audience gasped. Kelly stood up from her chair. And for a moment, it looked like she might walk off her own set. Instead, she turned to face Robert directly, her voice controlled but icy. I want to be very clear about something, Robert. I invited you here as a guest. I have supported your work, your family's legacy, and I've given you a platform to reach millions of people. But I will not sit here and be disrespected on my own show. If you think what we do here is treating animals like circus acts, then maybe you shouldn't have agreed to come on in the first place. Robert stood as well, still holding the skink. Maybe you're right. Maybe I shouldn't have because, clearly, you're more interested in getting laughs than actually making a difference. Get off my stage, Kelly said, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. Right now. We're done here. Gladly, Robert replied, placing the skink back in its container. I have better places to be than somewhere that treats important work like entertainment filler. Security, Kelly called out, though no one moved immediately. The producers were frozen, cameras still rolling, capturing every second of this unprecedented meltdown. Robert picked up his container and started walking toward the side of the stage. Kelly returned to her chair, visibly shaking. Whether from anger or shock wasn't entirely clear. The audience sat in absolute silence, unsure if they should applaud, gasp, or do anything at all. As Robert reached the edge of the stage, Kelly called out one more time. You know what, Robert? Your father would be ashamed of how you just acted. Robert stopped dead in his tracks. He turned around slowly, his face drained of color. The container in his hands trembled slightly as he stared at Kelly, who immediately seemed to realize she had crossed a line even she hadn't intended to cross. What did you just say? Robert's voice was barely above a whisper. But in the dead silence of the studio, everyone heard it perfectly. Kelly opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time since the argument began, she looked uncertain. Robert, I want you to repeat it, Robert said, walking back toward the center of the stage. You want to talk about my father? Let's talk about him. Let's talk about how he spent every single day of his life trying to educate people, trying to make them understand that every creature on this planet matters. Let's talk about how he died doing exactly that. I shouldn't have said that, Kelly said quietly. That was out of line, you think? Robert's voice rose now, the emotion breaking through. You think bringing up my dead father suggesting he'd be ashamed of me, that was just a little out of line? That's what you do when someone challenges you on your own show. Kelly stood again, her hands raised in a placating gesture. Robert, I apologize. That was wrong. I was angry, and I said something hurtful, and I shouldn't have. But you also came on here and attacked me for what? Not being enthusiastic enough about a lizard. It's not about the lizard. Robert's voice cracked. It's about what you represent. You have millions of people watching you every single day. And you use that platform to sell products, to make jokes, to do celebrity gossip. When someone comes on your show trying to do something meaningful, you treat it like a novelty act. That is not fair, Kelly shot back, her own voice rising again. I have had countless guests on this show talking about important issues. I've raised money for charities. I've highlighted causes. I've given platforms to people who are doing incredible work. You don't get to diminish that just because I don't want to hold every reptile you bring out here. But that's the thing, Kelly. You do hold them. You do it for the cameras, for the bit, for the audience reaction. But the second we're talking seriously about conservation, about the actual importance of these animals, you shut down. You get defensive. You make it about yourself because you made it about me. Kelly exclaimed, gesturing broadly. You came out here, and instead of just showing people this beautiful animal and educating them about it, you decided to use your time to criticize me. How is that helping your cause? How is alienating a host who has supported you helping conservation? Robert set the container down on the table with more force than necessary. Don't smile and pretend to be fascinated when really you're counting down the seconds. Until I leave. Kelly's eyes flashed. You want authenticity? Fine, here's authentic. Yes, Robert. I am sometimes uncomfortable around reptiles. Yes, I sometimes count down the seconds during certain segments, including some of yours. You know why? Because this is a job. I do 4 shows a week. I interview dozens of people. I can't be deeply emotionally invested in every single topic that comes across my stage. That doesn't mean I don't respect the work. It means I'm human. At least that's honest, Robert said, nodding slowly. So all those times you told me how amazing the animals were, how important the work was, you were lying. I wasn't lying, Kelly insisted. Frustration evident in every word. I do think it's amazing. I do think it's important. But I can think something is important without wanting to dedicate my life to it. You're holding me to an impossible standard. No, I'm holding you to the standard my father set, Robert countered. He believed that everyone had a responsibility to care about the natural world. Not just wildlife experts, not just conservationists. Everyone, and people like you, people with influence, you have an even greater responsibility. Kelly laughed bitterly. Your father was a saint to you, Robert. I understand that. But not everyone can be Steve Irwin. Not everyone can dedicate their entire existence to one cause. Some of us have to balance multiple things. Some of us have to entertain millions of people while also trying to inform them. It's not as simple as you're making it sound. Don't you dare talk about my father like you knew him, Robert said, his voice dangerously quiet again. Don't you dare act like you understand what he believed or what he stood for. I'm not claiming to have known him, Kelly said. But I know what I've read. I know what I've seen. And I know that he would probably be horrified watching. You attack someone who has given you multiple platforms to share your message. He was about bringing people together, not tearing them apart. The audience murmured at this. Some seemed to agree with Kelly. Others were clearly on Robert's side. The division in the room was palpable. Robert's jaw clenched. You have no right to speak about what my father would or wouldn't think. You've invited me here 3 times. 3 times. And every single time, it's been the same. You bring me out, you act nervous around whatever animal I have. You make jokes about being scared, and then you thank me for coming and move on to the next thing. Nothing changes. No one's mind has changed. It's just entertainment. Then stop coming. Kelly threw her hands up. If it's such a terrible experience, if I'm such a disappointment, then decline the invitation next time. But don't come on my show, accept my hospitality, sit on my couch, and then attack me for not living up to your impossible expectations. Maybe I will stop coming, Robert said. Maybe that's exactly what I should do, because clearly this isn't working. Fine by me, Kelly responded. I have plenty of other guests who actually appreciate the opportunity to reach our audience. Guests who are happy to play your game, Robert said. You mean guests who will smile and nod and give you exactly what you want without challenging you or making you uncomfortable. Guests who understand basic professionalism, Kelly fired back. Guests who don't throw tantrums when I'm not falling over myself with enthusiasm about every single thing they bring. Robert picked up his container again. This isn't a tantrum, Kelly. This is me finally saying what I've been thinking for years. What a lot of people in conservation have been thinking, that people like you treat our work like a joke. And this is me finally saying what I've been thinking, Kelly shot back. That you have an arrogance problem. You think because your work is important, that gives you the right to talk down to everyone else. Newsflash, Robert. Everyone's work is important to them. You're not special just because you work with animals. The words hung in the air between them like a physical barrier. Robert's face had gone from pale to flushed. Kelly stood her ground, chin raised, refusing to back down, even though her hands were shaking slightly at her sides. "Get off my stage," Kelly repeated, enunciating each word carefully. "This interview is over. This relationship is over. You are no longer welcome on this show." Robert nodded once sharply. "Trust me, I won't be back." He turned and walked off the stage this time, not stopping, not looking back. Kelly stood in the center of her stage, watching Robert disappear through the side exit. The studio remained eerily silent, every camera still rolling, capturing her standing there alone. With her chest heaving from the adrenaline of the confrontation, she looked out at her audience, hundreds of faces staring back at her with expressions ranging from shock to sympathy to judgment. "Well," Kelly finally said, her voice shaking slightly, "that was something." A few nervous laughs rippled through the audience, but they died quickly. She walked back to her chair and sat down heavily, running a hand through her hair. "I need a minute here, folks. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm pretty shaken up." The audience remained quiet, waiting. Kelly looked at her producers off stage, then back at the audience. "You know what? No, I'm not going to just move on like that. Pretend it didn't happen. We're live. You all saw it, and I think we need to talk about it." She took a deep breath, composing herself. "I have been doing this show for years now. I have had thousands of guests sit on this couch. I have had uncomfortable moments. I've had disagreements. But I have never, ever had someone come on here and treat me the way Robert just did." A few audience members nodded. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "And the thing is," Kelly continued, her voice growing stronger, "I get it. I understand that he's passionate about his work. I understand that conservation is important. I have never, not once, suggested otherwise. But what just happened here? That wasn't about conservation. That was about him deciding that because I'm not as passionate as he is, because, okay, I don't dedicate my entire life to wildlife, that somehow makes me the enemy." She stood up again, pacing slightly. "I work hard on this show. We all do. My team, my crew, everyone you see and don't see. We pour our hearts into creating something that brings joy to people. We laugh together. We cry together. We celebrate together. And yes, we also try to educate and inform when we can. But we're not a nature documentary. We're a talk show. And there's value in that too." The audience began to applaud slowly at first, then building. Kelly held up a hand to quiet them. "But here's what really bothers me. Robert brought up his father multiple times. He weaponized his father's death, his father's legacy, to try to win an argument. And then when I said one thing about his father, which I immediately regretted and apologized for, he acted like I had committed the worst sin imaginable." She paused, her eyes glistening slightly. "I lost my father too. I know what that grief feels like. And I would never ever use that grief to try to make someone feel small or to win a point in an argument. That's not okay. It doesn't matter how important your cause is. You don't get to do that." More applause, louder this time. Kelly nodded, acknowledging it. "And you know what else? I'm tired of being made to feel guilty for being human, for having normal reactions to things. I've held snakes on this show. I've had tarantulas on me. I've done things that genuinely scare me because I want to support the people who come on here. But apparently, that's not enough. Apparently, unless I'm ready to quit my job and move to Australia to work at a wildlife sanctuary, I'm part of the problem. She laughed, but there was an edge to it. That's not fair. That's not reasonable. And honestly, it's that kind of attitude that turns people away from causes, not draws them in. You don't inspire people by making them feel inadequate. You don't create change by attacking everyone who isn't doing exactly what you're doing. Kelly sat back down, smoothing her dress. I want to be very clear about something. I still respect the Irwin family's work. I still think wildlife conservation is important. What happened here today doesn't change that. What it does change is my willingness to be lectured and belittled by someone who apparently thinks he has the moral high ground on everything. She looked directly into the camera. Robert is watching the sand. I'm sure he will want to say this. You owe me an apology. Not for disagreeing with me. Not for being passionate about your work. But for the way you spoke to me. For the way you disrespected me on my own show. For bringing up my supposed failings instead of just doing what you came here to do, which was show people a beautiful animal and teach them something. The audience applauded again. Kelly waited for them to quiet down. And to everyone watching at home, I want you to know that I'm okay. I'm upset, yes. I'm angry, yes. But I'm okay. What I won't do is let someone make me feel like I'm not doing enough, like I'm not good enough, because I don't meet their specific standards of activism. She picked up her cards, glanced at them briefly, then set them back down. We were supposed to have 2 more segments today, cooking demonstration and a musical performance, but honestly, I don't think any of us are in the right headspace for that right now. She looked at her audience with a weak smile. Is that okay with you all? Can we just? I don't know. Talk for a minute.